On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the UFC light heavyweight title fight headlining UFC 313 March 8th in Las Vegas. Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. My name is James Lynch. If you've never watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats and intangibles, and then I'm going to give you my prediction for this fight at the end of this video. Let me know in the comments which way you're leaning on this fight. Would love to hear from you on this matchup. And let's do a quick tail of the tape between these two. You can see Poatan, Alex Pereira, 12-2, Magomed Ankalaev, 21-1, 37 years old to 32, 6'4" to 6'3", 80-inch reach to 75. So Pereira going to be a little bit bigger as far as the height and reach. Ankalaev's got more experience. Ankalaev's also younger though at 32 compared to 37. Let's start first with the current champ, Alex Pereira. So I mentioned it there, 12-2 record. He's got 10 knockouts, doesn't have any submission wins, and he's got 2 decisions. He's 37 years old, 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. He'll have a 1-inch height and 5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's the current light heavyweight champion. He's had 3 successful title defenses in that weight class. He's also the former UFC middleweight champion as well. And he's got the shortest time for 3 consecutive title defenses in UFC history, which is 175 days. Of course, he was the guy that the UFC would call last year if they needed a main event. He was the guy that always stepped up to the plate. UFC 300, UFC 303, and UFC 307. So he was very busy in 2024. We'll see how 2025 goes with this fight. Pereira did not have an amateur debut, obviously, because he was in kickboxing. That's how he started his career. Went 33-7 as a kickboxer with 21 knockouts. Made his pro debut in October of 2015. Made his UFC debut in November of 2021. So reason there's such a big gap, obviously, is because he had the kickboxing in between there. He is 9-1 in the UFC. He's got 7 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz, Jamal Hill. 2 wins over Yuri Prohaska, most recently Khalil Roundtree. His only loss is to Israel Adesanya. That was a knockout loss at middleweight in 2023. Pereira's been one of the most active fighters since he joined the UFC. Almost 2 fights a year, basically, since he's joined. In the case of last year, 3 fights. So very busy guy as far as the activity level. He's only had 1 fight that was close, and that was the fight with Jan Blachowicz at UFC 291. I believe that was the Utah card where there was a bit of elevation involved. That's right, Salt Lake City. And looking at MMA decisions, very close fight you can see here. Whoops. As my browsers are kind of messing up here. So you can see the media scorecards for this one. He ended up winning 29-28, but most people did score the fight for Pereira, the media that is. You can see a lot of 29-28s, but we also had it going the other way, 29-28 for Blachowicz from a couple of journalists as well. I thought it was close. I thought Pereira did win the fight, but still, it's the only fight we've really seen from Pereira that's been like really close as far as the scorecards. I mean, not many fighters live to go to the judges' scorecards with Alex Pereira, so that is one key fight because that was, again, in July of 2023. And then Pereira's stats, very eye-opening, very eye-popping here. You can see here, significant strikes landed per minute, 5.46. His striking accuracy, 63%. His striking defense is at 55%, gets hit a little bit. His takedown accuracy is at 100%. His takedown defense is at 70, so that's something to keep in mind. And his takedown average is 1.4, although he's going to want to keep this fight standing. So that's where things get a little bit interesting in this fight. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about Alex Pereira. It's been a very unique career for him, coming over from the world of kickboxing, winning 2 UFC belts in such a short period of time. It is pretty remarkable what he's done, but this is the fight everyone wants to see. Magomed Ankalaev, one of the most well-rounded guys he's faced off with, and let's talk about why that's the case here. As you can see, Ankalaev, 21-1. He's got 10 knockouts, no submissions, and 9 decisions. He's currently ranked number 1 in the division. He's 32 years old, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach, so he's 5 years younger than Alex Pereira. He's got performance of the night 4 times against Martin Brashino, Dalcha, Ion Cutelaba, and Johnny Walker. He's got the second longest win streak in light heavyweight division history at 9. He's got the second longest unbeaten streak at UFC light heavyweight division history at 13. He made his amateur debut way back in April of 2013, made his pro debut in January of 2014, made his UFC debut in March of 2018. He's 11-1-1 in the UFC. He's got 5 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include Ion Cutelaba. I know people won't say that's notable, but Cutelaba was ranked when he defeated him. Nikita Krylov, Volkan Ozdemir, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Johnny Walker, and Alexander Rakic, most recently in his last fight. His only loss was against Paul Craig. And that was a fight, if you watched it, he was winning the majority of the fight, got caught at the end of the fight, and then ended up getting submitted. Paul Craig's just one of those fighters that has like 2 really good wins. He obviously submitted both Ankalaev and Jamal Hill. Still Jamal Hill's only loss. I guess they technically counted it a TKO because he broke his arm, but Paul Craig, submissions, that's his thing. But yeah, the reason I bring that up is because you look at the loss. Ankalaev was on his way to winning that fight. He made a mistake. He got caught. They rematch. I'm positive Ankalaev would have won that fight. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the draw with Jan Blachowicz, we'll talk about that in a sec as far as close fights. because that was an interesting one. Ankalaev getting injured midway through the fight, so that was something that was certainly interesting there. Ankalaev's been fairly active, but he has one long layoff. There was the fight going from Jan Blachowicz to Johnny Walker. There was a 315-day layoff, so that was December 2022 to October of 2023, so a bit of a layoff there. He fought in October and is going to be fighting on this card, so not a long layoff whatsoever. I wanted to mention the fight against Jan Blachowicz. Let's go look that up on MMA Decisions. Again, this isn't the be-all, end-all, but I like showing you guys how people were thinking at the time when it comes to certain decisions. So Blachowicz gets a draw. So they have that common opponent in Jan Blachowicz, with Pereira obviously beating him, and then going to a draw with Ankalaev. So if you look at that here and you look at the scorecard, so they scored it a draw, but the majority of media scored this for Ankalaev, 49-45. I thought Ankalaev won the fight. I did think he did enough. That was at UFC 282. So if my math's correct here, that's 23 media members scoring the fight for Ankalaev, 2 for Blachowicz. So looking at the context of Ankalaev's record, and this does change how you may think of him going forward here, okay? So, he lasts a little bit longer against Paul Craig. He gets the win there, and then people felt like he beat Jan. We could be talking about a fighter who is 22-0 instead of a fighter who's 21-1. That certainly makes things look a little bit different, doesn't it? If he was to fight Pereira and he was undefeated, right? He's not undefeated, but that's one thing to keep in mind. I think that people forget that Ankalaev's a pretty tough guy to take out for the most part. And even Paul Craig getting that win, that was a 3rd round finish there too. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's look at his stats. A little bit different than Alex Pereira. Significant strikes landed per minute, 3.64, so a little bit lower there. Striking accuracy is at 52%. Significant strikes landed per minute, 2.37. His striking defense is at 58%, so he doesn't get hit that much. Actually, that's a very high number for most of these fighters when it comes to UFC stats. So that's a key thing to keep in mind in this fight, because how does Alex Pereira win? He wins by knockout. His takedown average is 0.92. His takedown accuracy is only at 31%, and his takedown defense is at 86%, although I don't think Alex Pereira is going to shoot for a takedown in this fight. So, and then having a look at the odds right now, we do have some odds. It's close. And that's kind of the way I see this fight. So you got Pereira here coming in as a slight favorite, -120. I think the line actually opened. So the line opened with Ankalaev as a bigger dog. So money has come in on Ankalaev here, as you can see on DraftKings. He was +142. It's been bet down to +100. So people are kind of on the fence on this one. Even Betway having the odds at even with the fight. Keep an eye on the odds, obviously, when the fight actually comes to fight week, because we're doing this early. It's called early look, so the odds do change every now and then. So that's something to keep in mind. And Tapology tells a bit of a different story. Most people going with Pereira here at 74%. They predict him to 94% of them predicting him to win by knockout. Okay, so this is a really interesting fight as I've sort of gone through here, but there's a couple other intangibles that I think are worth mentioning. So we've heard in the media leading into this fight that Magomed Ankalaev has claimed that he wants to stand and trade with Pereira. I think that's a terrible idea. Why play to your opponent's strengths? What's the method to victory to beat Alex Pereira? It's getting him on the ground. It's potentially trying to work that ground game, potentially trying to submit him, or at least keep him on his back. Keep those weapons at bay. That's the way to win this fight. But there's two things that I've seen about this Ankalaev wanting to strike narrative that's going into this fight. So the first one is the narrative that we've heard him say this on Twitter. I think it's pretty obvious that Magomed Ankalaev is not writing his own tweets. He doesn't speak English. He has to get a translator when he does his interviews. I highly doubt he's going to Google Translate and translating everything on there and putting that in Twitter. I'm almost positive it's his manager doing it. So there's that. However, I did hear from some other people that know Russian and speak Russian and can understand Russian that he has said similar things in interviews as well, or a interview is what I've been told. So it does sound like that's the plan. Now, is this gamesmanship? Is this just a way to say I'm man enough that I could outstrike him? Maybe. That's you got to kind of bank on that maybe it's just gamesmanship, so to speak, just for the simple fact that, like, why would you go fight someone at their best strength? You know what I mean? Like, if you know this is a guy that's, a little bit weaker on the ground, why would you not try for that takedown? So I don't know. Like, I'm kind of the belief that there is some gamesmanship here. I can't imagine, with how hard it was with Ankalaev trying to get this title shot, that he would just all of a sudden throw it all away to try and see who the better striker is. I don't think his ego's like that he would think he could outstrike, because look what's happened. Sean Strickland, you remember that fight? Sean Strickland said, these glory kickboxers don't have anything on us, or something along those lines. He's like, I'm going to stand and trade with Pereira. What happens? He gets knocked out in the first round. I think we've seen that enough that Pereira can certainly knock anyone out. With all that said, I have to obviously mention that little intangible going into the fight. With all that said, I'm going with Magomed Ankalaev to win a decision here. Now, I get it. Pereira can knock him out. Pereira's certainly knocked out a lot of fighters in his career. He can knock out almost anyone. He can knock out Ankalaev. He really can. All he has to do is hit one time in a 5-round fight, and he can knock out Magomed Ankalaev. But Like I mentioned, you look at the stats, Ankalaev, very good striking defense. Ankalaev's defeated other strikers before too. Look at guys like Alexander Rakic. Kutalaba's got some striking. You look at some of the other names, Santos. He's fought not on Pereira's level, but he's certainly been in there with strikers. And, he outstruck, an Alexander Rakic, which is very impressive. Now, again, Rakic is not on the same level as an Alex Pereira, but that's still a very good feather in his cap that he was able to go out there and finish, or not finish, but to outstrike Rakic. Johnny Walker has knockout power. He knocked him out. He's capable of being good in the stand-up if for some reason he can't get it to the ground. But what I look at here, is that Ankalaev does have the ability to get takedowns. And now look, Ankalaev, I think a lot of people get confused. He's not a typical Dagestani fighter. He's not known for his wrestling, grappling. He is more of a striker, but he at least is able to do it. And he's at least able to get the fight to the ground. Against Jan Blachowicz, another very good striker, Ankalaev was having a lot of success in that fight, in terms of some of the things he was able to do. Like I said, I thought he won that fight. That shouldn't have been a draw. So, yeah, basically boils down to, a number of different things. So I think that, with Ankalaev being younger, the fact that he's never been knocked out in his career, and the fact that I think he's more well-rounded in terms of he's got a bit of striking, but he's also got the wrestling and ground game too. I think that makes him, a favorite in this spot. I mentioned him beating good strikers already. Again, not to the level of Pereira, but that's still encouraging. Like if Ankalaev had an issue with strikers going into this fight, yeah, I'd feel more encouraged by picking Alex Pereira. 45% of Ankalaev's wins are by decision. He doesn't finish a lot of fights. I know 50% of his wins are by knockout, but I highly doubt he's going to knock out Alex Pereira. Pereira has been knocked out before, but that was at 85. I think that had more to do with the weight cut, with him getting finished against Adesanya, as opposed to him getting finished at 205, even though he does cut some weight to get to 205 as well. The other thing we got to point out here too, what's Pereira's closest fight? It's the Jan Blachowicz fight. What is Jan Blachowicz? What was he able to do in that fight? He was able to get takedowns. Let's have a quick look at the stats here just for a second. We'll kind of go back in memory lane as my browser's taking a second to load here. So if you look in that fight against Jan Blachowicz, Blachowicz was able to get 3 takedowns in that fight. I think Ankalaev should be able to do that too, at the very least. I'd say Jan's more of a wrestler than Ankalaev, but still, he was able to get 3 takedowns out of 8 in that fight. I think Ankalaev could have some success there too. So that's something to keep in mind. And what do Pereira's last couple of opponents at 205 all have in common? They've all pretty much been strikers. Yuri, striker, didn't use any wrestling. Yuri, striker. Khalil Roundtree, Jamal Hill. All these guys tried to stand and trade with Pereira, and they ended up getting knocked out. So as long as Ankalaev doesn't do that, or at least does it temporarily and then goes for the takedown, I think Ankalaev can win this fight. So I think it's been very convenient for Pereira. And again, he's fought good opposition, like, Prohaska, Jamal Hill. Like, these are all good fighters in their own right. But Ankalaev, I think, would beat most of these guys, personally, if we're going to use a little MMA math here. So listen, I'm not saying, like, just because I know people do this when I do these breakdowns. Of course, Pereira can win this fight. Of course, he can win by knockout. It takes one shot. He could be the first guy to knock out Ankalaev. Wouldn't be surprised by that. But everything we've seen here in terms of what Ankalaev's done up until this point, the fact that, again, you look at his losses, the Paul Craig fight, he was winning that fight. The Jan Blachowicz fight, which I think should have been a win instead of a draw. This is a guy that is very tough to take out, and he's younger, and he's more well-rounded in my opinion. I think he can take this fight. But could Alex Pereira go out there and knock him out? Absolutely. Like, don't sit here and say I never said he couldn't do it, because I'm telling you right now, he can do it. This fight's very close. I'm banking on the fact. The biggest reason for this pick is I'm banking on the fact that Ankalaev's bluffing, and he's not going to stand and trade. If he does stand and trade in this fight, he's going to get knocked out. So just want to be clear about that. Like, I'm very aware of what Ankalaev said in the media, but I think he's just playing, it's gamesmanship. He's just saying that to, I don't know, maybe trick the fans or trick Pereira, but I really think he's going to go for some takedowns, and I think he'll have some success there. Now, saying that as well, Pereira does train with Glover Teixeira. We haven't seen much of his ground game. I got to imagine a guy like Glover Teixeira who's got exceptional BJJ. Some of that's rubbed off on Pereira, but I just think Ankalaev is going to win this fight, and I think he's going to win by decision. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Which way are you leading on this one? This is an interesting fight as well, because you've got two of the most passionate fan bases in the sport right now that I know have strong leans both ways, right? So I get it. Listen, people think I don't like Pereira. I like Pereira a lot. I picked him in the Yuri fight, Khalil Roundtree, both Yuri fights, Khalil Roundtree. I think I even picked him in the Adesanya, I guess it would be trilogy, but rematch in MMA, and he ended up getting knocked out. So I'm not anti Alex Pereira by any means. I just think he's fighting a guy that is a lot more well-rounded than some of the other guys that he's fought, and I think Ankalaev will ultimately get it done. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. This is Early Look. Thanks so much for watching.